My name is Alara Quinn, and I'm 32 years old. The night this began, we were watching a show about competitive glass blowing, the kind where the glass turns to honey and then to light. Carter laughed at the judge's metaphors. Buster, our rescue mutt with one ear that refused to agree with the other, snored like a tiny engine at our feet. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and buttered noodles, domestic as a postcard. Carter was on his phone more than usual. Not suspicious. Carter's thumbs learned choreography before his brain did, but constant. He kept angling the screen away from me, as if his notifications were shy. I told myself it was work. I told myself 100 generous things. At 11 p.m., I kissed his hair and said I was going to bed. He grunted a distracted goodnight, eyes still blue lit. I fell asleep to the soft, rhythmic tapping of someone writing a life they hadn't invited me to read. At 2:04 a.m., my throat was dry. I patted out for water. The living room light was still on. The couch was empty. The coffee table looked like a stage that had forgotten its actors. The quiet felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like the house was holding its breath. "Carter?" I called softly. The bathroom door was open. Our bedroom was empty. His keys were gone. One of the suitcases from the top of the closet was missing, the space it left like a tooth yanked from the gum. A cold, steady clarity slid into me, the kind the body saves for emergencies. I picked up my phone. Before I could decide who to call, a notification blinked across the lock screen. Sabrina Hale added to her story. Sabrina. The name had history like a bruise under makeup. She was Carter's ex. "We're friends now," he'd say with the kind of smile that begs you not to squint at it. A curated life turned up to 11. Brand collabs, hotel mirrors, long captions about growth. She had married last year. The wedding looked like it had been sponsored by Sunset. I hadn't thought of her in months. I tapped the story. A dim bar, all amber and intention. A champagne flute leaned into another for the kiss of glass on glass. The camera panned just enough to catch Carter's arm slung casual over Sabrina's shoulders, like muscles have memories. He was smiling with the confidence of someone who believed the lighting would love him. The caption arced across the screen like a dare. "Some boys never become men." Trading up. For a second, all the sound in the world tunneled. Then it came back loud. Buster's snore, the refrigerator hum, my pulse counting out a new math. I clicked her profile picture, then the bio link, then the feed I already knew would be public. Sabrina never met a privacy setting she couldn't turn into a networking opportunity. The third photo stopped me. A professional maternity shoot. Sabrina, glowing, cradling a belly that meant imminence. A man, Michael Hale, kissed her forehead. The caption, "Can't wait to meet our little princess. My amazing husband is a champion. Hashtag girl dad." Countdown. The post was 3 weeks old. I didn't feel rage, not yet. I felt a feeling so precise it could have come in a velvet box. I thought in declarative sentences the way I do when code breaks and the bug is hiding under something obvious. This is a problem with a solution. I didn't text Carter. I didn't call Sabrina. I didn't throw anything, even though the glass-blowing episode was still paused mid-furnace on our TV like a metaphor with smoke. Instead, I opened our engagement photos, the ones we paid too much for because the photographer called herself a documentarian of devotion. There was one picture I loved despite everything. Carter kissing my temple, my hand tilted to show the ring. My smile looked real enough to be evidence in either direction. I opened Instagram. My account has 10 posts and a suspicious relationship with dust. I uploaded the photo. The caption box waited like a field that only needed one seed. "Congratulations." I tagged at Carter Hayes. I tagged at Sabrina Hale. I typed at Michael Thale. Public, of course. Nursery tours and stroller debates and countdown clocks. I pressed share. Then I set the phone face up on the kitchen counter and poured water. Cold. Practical. My heart, traitor or hero, depending on audience, slowed into something like a plan. It took less than a minute. The phone lit up, a strobe of panic. Carter first, then Sabrina, then numbers that had never texted me before. I let them stack into a tower of noise. Then the device began to buzz with calls. Carter again. Unknown. Sabrina. The screen filled with missed call dots, like constellations I had no interest in naming. From the coffee table, another device stirred to life. Carter's iPad, left under a magazine like a secret that didn't bother to hide. A cascade of notifications rained down. Instagram, WhatsApp, texts, group chats we shared, with people who would happily narrate this to us if we switched phones. Ilara posted what? Is this real? Call me now. Explain. I didn't. I drank water on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets, Buster relocating so his head could rest on my thigh. He whined, a small, confused sound. I ran a hand over the velvet between his eyes. It's okay, I told him. It wasn't, but one of us needed to hear it in a calm voice. 5 minutes later, the door rattled, knuckles too hard. Then the peephole filled with a slice of Carter's face, the slice you get when someone hasn't practiced contrition in a hallway. Ilara, he said through the wood, not loud exactly, but urgent. Open the door. We need to talk. I stayed seated on the kitchen floor, phone still lighting and dimming on the counter like a buoy. Ilara, please. He knocked again, more insistent. That post, take it down. You don't understand. My phone buzzed with the new email banner at the top. Cease and desist. Immediate action required. The sender block shouted a law firm whose website looks like a museum foyer. I didn't open it. Not yet. There would be time for paper tigers in the morning. Carter's knock softened. Ilara, this is going to get messy. You don't want that. I exhaled through my nose, a sound that surprised me by being a laugh. I hadn't wanted a lot of things. The knocking stopped. A text from Carter. Open the door or I'm calling the police. Then another. You're being insane. Insane. I let the word roll around like a penny in the dryer. Insane is posting a toast to betrayal on your ex's story while your current wife is weeks from giving birth. Insane is thinking the truth is defamatory. I stood, finally, took the phone, and walked to the door. I didn't open it. I pressed my palm to the wood between us, a gesture he couldn't see. My voice was steady, the way you speak to a skittish animal. Go home, Carter. A beat when we can fix this. We did. I looked at the engagement photo still fresh on my feed. I already posted the patch note. Silence gathered itself up and left. Footsteps retreated. The hallway returned to its regular breathing. I turned off the living room light. In the bedroom, I set my phone to Do Not Disturb. On the nightstand, the screen exhaled one last glow, then went still, like the end of a performance that didn't deserve applause. Buster leapt onto the bed and made a show of choosing my side. I lay on my back and watched the ceiling learn the news. The thing about 2 a.m. is that it pretends to be alone, but the truth doesn't keep office hours. It's happy to work nights. I closed my eyes and felt the smallest of mercies. Not triumph, not even relief. Direction. This is a problem with a solution. By morning, the world had already turned my silence into a broadcast. When I opened my inbox, there were 3 categories of messages: apologies from mutual friends, gossip disguised as concern, and one subject line that hummed with legal weight: cease and desist, immediate action required. I clicked it. The logo at the top looked like it belonged on marble. Henderson and Pike, LLP. And the body of the email might as well have been a tantrum written in legalese. It accused me of harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It demanded that I delete my Instagram post and issue a written apology to Carter Hayes and Ms. Sabrina Hale. It also included a note about potential damages, a number so high it could have paid for a year's worth of therapy I'd never asked for. It was almost poetic. The people who had detonated my life in public now wanted to sue me for airing the smoke. I stared at the email until Buster pawed at my leg, reminding me that breakfast and sanity both needed attention. I poured his food, made coffee, and dialed Nathan Wells, my contract lawyer. Nathan was the type who could explain disaster in bullet points. I'd used him before for freelance agreements, and he'd once said, "People don't surprise me anymore, they just get louder." When I told him what happened, he let out a slow whistle. So, your fiancé left you for his married ex, and now they're sending you a cease and desist for tagging the husband? That's the summary, he chuckled. Well, congratulations on doing something perfectly legal that's socially catastrophic. I laughed for the first time since 2 a.m. Nathan continued, voice steady. The letter's 90% intimidation. You didn't say anything false. You posted a photo that was real and a caption that wasn't defamatory. Still, I know, I interrupted. Optics. Exactly. Take it down. The damage is already done. Screenshots are eternal, and right now you need to look like the reasonable adult in the room. Reasonable adult. I could do that. It was the only role I'd been trained for. Document everything, he added. Screenshots, timestamps, even that email. Create a folder. Call it something boring, like receipts. You'll thank yourself later. When the call ended, I followed his instructions to the letter. Every message, every post, every comment that mentioned my name went into a folder. By noon, I had a digital archive that could withstand the apocalypse. And yet, under the calm movements of documentation, there was a steady drumbeat of something colder. Revenge was too glamorous a word. This was arithmetic. If they wanted to play power, I would play precision. That's when I opened the lease. Carter and I had moved into the apartment 3 years ago. His name was on it alongside mine. The lease was standard, joint tenancy, shared responsibility, but near the bottom, under a block of neglected small print, I found it. Clause 7B, property abandonment. If a tenant removes personal effects and demonstrates intent to vacate the premises, the remaining tenant may assume full control pending notice to the landlord. Intent to vacate. I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time that day. Carter hadn't just demonstrated intent. He'd live-streamed it. His suitcase was gone. His car missing. His ex-bar tag captioned, "Trading up." Add the text he sent, "I'm coming with police to get my things tomorrow," and the case practically wrote itself. By late afternoon, the fear that had chased me through the morning dissolved into focus. I called a locksmith. The man who arrived looked like someone who'd seen every version of heartbreak behind a door. "Bad breakup?" he asked, unpacking his tools. "Something like that," I said. He nodded, no further questions, and worked efficiently. In less than half an hour, the old lock lay in his palm like a pulled tooth. He handed me 3 new keys. "Fresh start," he said. That phrase lingered longer than it should have. At 11:45 a.m., I composed an email to our landlord. Subject: change of tenant access. Dear Mr. Greer, as of today, I've secured the premises per Clause 7B of our lease. Attached are screenshots demonstrating that Mr. Hayes has vacated and declared intent not to return. Please consider me the sole responsible tenant moving forward. Sincerely, Alara Quinn. I CC'd Nathan. Then, for good measure, attach Sabrina's trading up post. Cropped, time-stamped, polite. 5 minutes later, Nathan replied, "Perfect. You're covered. Don't let him in without a court order." At 6:12 p.m., a text from Carter arrived. "I'm coming tomorrow at noon with police. Don't try anything." I read it twice. The phrasing was so performative it could have been an email pitch to a reality show. I typed back one word. Okay. That night, I packed the remnants of his life into neat, impersonal boxes. The process was strangely meditative, sorting through shirts that still smelled like cologne, receipts from trips we never took, a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Fiancé." Buster sat nearby, tail flicking, watching each item vanish. When I reached the small framed photo of us at his sister's wedding, I paused. Carter's smile in the picture was unburdened, like he hadn't yet learned that truth carries interest. I placed it gently into a box labeled "Miscellaneous," sealed it with tape, and whispered to the air, "For once, let's be the ones who prepare." Saturday morning, the sky hung low and pewter. I brewed coffee strong enough to taste like armor. At 11:55, I heard the knock. 3 raps, firm, timed. I opened the door. Carter stood there, polished, furious, rehearsed. 2 uniformed police officers flanked him, both already weary of the scene. "Good morning," I said evenly. Carter crossed his arms. "I'm here for my belongings." "I expected you." His jaw tightened. "These officers are here to make sure you don't—" "I know why they're here," I interrupted, calm, "and I'm afraid you can't come in." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "You vacated the property," I said, holding up a printed copy of my email and the lease clause. "Legally, you abandoned it. I've assumed full tenancy. You'll need to coordinate retrieval of your things through my attorney." He turned to one of the officers, voice dripping with indignation. "She can't just—" The older officer cut him off. "Sir, this looks like a civil issue. She's got documentation. You'll need to go through the landlord or court." For a heartbeat, Carter's face was unreadable. Then it twisted, hurt morphing into panic. "Alara, you're being insane. You can't lock me out of my own home." I gestured to 2 cardboard boxes beside the doorway. "Essentials," I said simply. "Toothbrush, toiletries, your laptop, a few clothes. The rest is packed and in storage. My lawyer will send details." Carter stared at me, breathing uneven. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said softly, "but at least it'll be my choice." He opened his mouth again. but one of the officers cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if he wants the rest, you'll both need to handle it legally. Sir, I suggest you leave." The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was aftershock. Carter finally turned, muttering something under his breath as he walked toward the elevator. For a split second, through the open hallway window, I caught a flash of a dark SUV idling at the curb. In the passenger seat, a woman with sunglasses large enough to hide behind lowered her phone. Sabrina. Watching. Of course. I closed the door, slid the new bolt into place, and leaned against the wood. My pulse thundered, but my hands were steady. On the kitchen table, the lease papers lay where I'd left them, a single clause, highlighted in yellow. I reached for the coffee cup I'd left half full and whispered to the room, half to myself, half to the air that now belonged entirely to me. Clause 7B, predictable but perfect. Saturday afternoon, the silence after the door closed felt like another kind of noise, one I could finally stand to hear. The officers were gone. Carter was gone. Sabrina's SUV had rolled away from the curb like a black comma at the end of a sentence I didn't plan to finish. Inside, the apartment looked cleaner than it ever had, not because it was spotless, but because it was mine. Every surface had been claimed back by someone who finally remembered she was allowed to. Still, my hands shook when I reached for my coffee. Adrenaline doesn't leave politely. It lingers, checking for cracks. Buster sat at my feet, looking at the door like it might bark back. I knelt, scratching the soft fur behind his ear. "We did it," I whispered. He wagged once, then yawned, unimpressed. I let out a laugh that surprised me. It wasn't joy, but it was something close to oxygen. By evening, the ripple effects began. Texts from mutual friends poured in. "What happened? He's saying you went crazy." Sabrina posted something. Looks like a subtweet about betrayal. I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence was the loudest truth. Then, around 8, my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach tighten. Diane Hayes, Carter's mother. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" Her voice was tight, trembling between anger and disbelief. "Alara, what on earth did you do to my son?" I leaned back against the counter, staring at the city through the kitchen window. "I changed the locks, Diane." "He said you ambushed him with police." "Actually," I said calmly, "he brought the police. I just brought paperwork." A pause. "You didn't have to humiliate him." "He did that himself," I replied, more softly than I meant to. "I just provided lighting." She exhaled shakily, then whispered, "He loved you." I didn't answer. Love is one of those words that starts to feel like an IOU when you say it too many times without paying the balance. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, I was back at work, pretending to care about a client presentation while my inbox turned into a gossip archive. I closed the laptop and decided to leave early. On my way home, I passed Carter's favorite cafe, the kind with marble counters and overpriced croissants. Through the window, I saw him, alone, hunched over a coffee cup, scrolling through his phone. His hair was unwashed, his jaw unshaven, the kind of disarray money couldn't Photoshop away. And there she was, Sabrina, standing just outside, phone in hand, half turned away, pretending not to wait for him. Her reflection in the glass looked like a ghost of confidence past. For a moment, I almost pitied them. Two people who mistook chaos for chemistry. Then I kept walking. That night, Nathan called. "I just got the storage invoice," he said. "Everything's squared. You're legally airtight." "That's good." He paused. "You sound tired." "I think that's the word for peace after a storm." "Then here's some thunder for dessert," he said dryly. "Their lawyer's been sniffing around. They're threatening to sue for property theft and emotional damages." I sighed. "Of course they are." "I'll handle it," Nathan said. "They're hoping you'll blink first. Don't." "I won't." When we hung up, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. My cursor blinked, like it was asking a question I wasn't ready to answer. I started typing anyway. "You may try to rewrite the story, but I kept the receipts." Then I saved it under a new folder, Closure, Work in Progress. A week passed before the next hit landed. This time it wasn't legal, it was digital. Sabrina had posted again. A carefully composed image, her sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, mascara smudged, holding a wine glass. Caption: "Some people destroy you and call it justice, healing in progress. Hashtag truth will out, hatch toxic love." Within minutes, her followers flooded the comments with hearts and sympathy. One even wrote, "She's a monster. Stay strong, queen." The irony was exquisite. But the internet is unpredictable. It loves a villain until it finds a better one. Someone, anonymous, meticulous, probably a stranger with time, commented, "Isn't this the same Carter who's engaged?" And wasn't your husband's last post about their baby shower 3 weeks ago? The thread exploded. Within hours, screenshots of her trading up story resurfaced. People connected the dots faster than I ever could have hoped. By midnight, Sabrina's profile went private. Carter's disappeared altogether. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson from my office walked by my cubicle and slid a coffee onto my desk. "Saw something online last night," she said, her tone neutral, but her eyes full of mischief. "I don't know what you did, honey, but you did it clean." I smiled. "Thank you." She nodded approvingly. Sometimes justice just needs Wi-Fi. Later that evening, I walked Buster through the park. The air was thick with autumn, cold, sharp, honest. I passed couples holding hands, joggers with earbuds, parents herding sugar-high kids toward bedtime. Normal life, the kind I'd been too distracted to miss. At the far end of the park, my phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Deposition scheduled for next month. They're still pretending they have a case." I typed back, "Good. Let them talk. I've been quiet long enough." I slipped the phone into my pocket and looked up at the skyline, all steel and persistence. For the first time since that 2 a.m. discovery, I wasn't haunted by what Carter had done. I was curious, genuinely curious, about what came next when a woman stops reacting and starts rebuilding. "Come on, Buster," I said. "Let's go home." He barked once, as if in agreement. And as we walked back through the park, streetlights flickering on in slow succession, I realized something simple and profound. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just arrives quietly, after you've locked the right doors. It's amazing how cold a conference room can feel when your past walks in wearing a suit. 6 months later, I sat across a long glass table in downtown Nashville, fluorescent lights humming above like insects. To my left, Nathan adjusted his cufflinks with quiet precision. To my right, a pitcher of water sweated onto a stack of legal pads. Across from us sat Carter, pale and restless, next to a man in an expensive navy suit, the kind of lawyer who probably charged extra for oxygen. And next to him, because the universe loves symmetry, Sabrina Hale. She looked smaller in person. No filters, no ring lights, just skin and nerves. Her manicure trembled around a cup of black coffee she wasn't drinking. I could see the faint mark on her ring finger where a wedding band had once been. Nathan leaned towards me, voice low. "Ready?" I nodded, though ready wasn't the right word. There's no preparing for watching the people who broke you pretend to be victims. The opposing lawyer cleared his throat and began. "Ms. Quinn, my clients allege that you engaged in public defamation, unlawful property seizure, and deliberate emotional harm. You admit that you posted a photograph of yourself and Mr. Hayes, tagging my client, Ms. Hale, and her husband, yes?" "Yes," I said evenly. "With the intent to cause humiliation and distress?" I met his gaze. "With the intent to tell the truth." Nathan smiled faintly beside me. The lawyer pressed on. "You were aware that Ms. Hale was married at the time?" I was. She was also aware. A soft murmur passed through the room. Sabrina's lawyer shot her a glance that begged her to keep quiet. He tried another angle. "You locked Mr. Hayes out of your shared apartment. I exercised my rights under Clause 7B of our lease. Mr. Hayes vacated without notice, removed personal property, and declared intent not to return." I tapped the printed lease in front of me. "It's all documented." He frowned. "So you're saying you anticipated this? That you planned it?" I tilted my head slightly. "No, I prepared." Nathan's hand twitched, a restrained clap disguised as a note. When it was Nathan's turn to question them, the tone of the room changed entirely. His voice was calm, surgical. "Ms. Hale," he began, "when did your relationship with Mr. Hayes resume?" Sabrina's hands tightened around the coffee cup. "We were just friends." Nathan slid a paper across the table. "Is this your Instagram post from March 3rd, timestamped 11:17 p.m.? Her eyes flickered. "Yes." "Some boys never become men," he read aloud, pausing before the next line. "Trading up. Would you call this friendship?" Silence. He pressed further. "And 3 weeks prior to that, you posted a maternity photo with your husband, captioned, 'Counting down the days.' So at the time of your friendship with Mr. Hayes, you were publicly expecting a child with another man, correct?" Sabrina's voice was barely a whisper. It was complicated. "I'm sure," Nathan said, still polite. "Would you like me to play the recording of your podcast appearance from February, the one where you discussed your marriage?" Her lawyer quickly interjected. "We're not here to shame my client." Nathan interrupted softly. "We're here for the truth. Shame is optional." Carter shifted in his chair, jaw clenching. "Mr. Hayes," Nathan pivoted, turning his attention. "You claim Ms. Quinn engaged in harassment. Did you or did you not spend the night of April 12th with Ms. Hale at the Monarch Hotel? Carter blinked. That's irrelevant. Answer the question. It was a mistake. So you admit it happened? Yes, he muttered. Thank you, Nathan said. For the record, that charge was made to a joint credit card still active under Ms. Quinn's name. She has the statement. I'll submit it as Exhibit D. The opposing lawyer's face paled. Sabrina's hand flew to her mouth. The questioning went on for another hour. Dates, receipts, messages, screenshots, all laid bare under sterile lighting. Every lie Carter and Sabrina had rehearsed unraveled in slow motion. By the end, Sabrina was trembling. Carter was staring at the table like it might offer a time machine. When it was over, Nathan packed his files neatly. We'll wait to hear your offer, he said. They settled the next day. Carter relinquished all rights to the apartment, dropped his claims to any shared property, and agreed to reimburse storage costs. Sabrina signed a confidentiality agreement so airtight it could hold water at the bottom of the ocean. I didn't want money. I wanted silence. And I got it. Weeks later, word spread quietly. Sabrina and her husband divorced. She'd tried to frame it as a period of personal growth, but gossip has sharper teeth than therapy. Carter's once lucrative job in marketing, built on client trust, crumbled. People don't hire men who trend under the tag #trading up scandal. The internet has a short attention span, but a long memory. As for me, I kept my head down, worked, walked Buster twice a day, and repainted the apartment walls a warm sandstone beige. The color of things that endure quietly. One evening, as I was sealing the last box of paperwork from the case, Nathan called. It's officially closed, he said. All parties signed, no loose ends. I exhaled slowly. So that's it? That's it, he said, then softer. You handled this better than most people I know. I smiled into the phone. You'd be surprised what people can handle when they stop begging for closure and start writing it themselves. Later that night, I opened my window and let the city air drift in. It smelled like rain and concrete, honest, unadorned. On my nightstand sat a photo of Buster with his tongue out, a reminder that sometimes loyalty comes with fur, not flowers. I wasn't angry anymore, just awake. Because endings, I was learning, don't come with fireworks. They come with paperwork, quiet rooms, and the steady sound of your own heartbeat proving you survived. It's strange what peace sounds like after months of chaos. For me, it started with the sound of Buster's nails clicking on the hardwood floor while sunlight spilled across a room that no longer held anyone else's shadow. The legal noise had finally died down. The internet had moved on to newer scandals. My inbox was quiet, my phone free of messages from people who used to want updates like, my pain was a subscription. Now, mornings began with coffee and silence. Not the kind that weighs on you, but the kind that asks nothing in return. I had repainted everything. The apartment, once gray and sterile, now glowed in soft colors: sienna, linen, sage. I replaced Carter's designer prints with framed postcards from places I'd never been. The irony was comforting. They were promises to myself, not souvenirs from someone else's itinerary. The spare bedroom, the one that had once doubled as his office, became something else entirely. A writing nook, a lamp, a journal. The desk where I drafted invoices now held words I'd never sent. On the first page, in neat handwriting, I wrote, "When people show you who they are, take a screenshot." Buster barked once, like he approved. Carter didn't vanish. Ghosts rarely do. He texted once, a single message, mid-June. "You really didn't have to destroy me like that." I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed, "I didn't destroy you. I just stopped protecting the version of you that did." Then I hit send. No punctuation, no follow-up, just that. He never replied. 3 weeks later, Mrs. Patterson, the bakery client who had defended me online without hesitation, called out of the blue. "Elara," she said, laughter already bubbling under her words. "You'll never guess who applied for a job at my main shop." I smiled, already knowing. Sabrina? Bingo, social media manager. Her resume was creative, let's say. Claimed she managed high-profile campaigns and financial portfolios. I raised an eyebrow. "I bet she did." Mrs. Patterson chuckled. "Oh, I Googled her. Found all those deleted posts about the scandal. I sent her a polite email saying the position had been filled. Figured I'd let karma save us both time." "That was kind of you." "Kindness with sprinkles," she said. "The best kind." When we hung up, I laughed softly into the empty room. The universe doesn't need applause when it delivers poetry that clean. Summer came. The heat outside felt different, warmer, but not suffocating. I started walking Buster down to the river most evenings, just as the city lights began to flicker awake. Sometimes I sat on a bench near the bridge and watched couples drift by, hands brushing, laughter low. It didn't hurt. It felt like watching a movie I'd already seen once and didn't need to rewatch to understand the ending. One of those evenings, a man sat down on the other end of the bench, tall, dark scrubs, hospital ID badge, still clipped to his pocket. He smelled faintly of soap and peppermint. He nodded toward Buster. "That your sidekick?" "More like my parole officer," I said. He laughed, the kind of laugh that fills in the space instead of taking it. "I'm Ryan." "Elara." He reached down, scratching behind Buster's ear. "You live nearby?" "Top floor of the Ashby building." He smiled. "Then we're neighbors. I live one floor down." That small coincidence turned into a conversation. Then another, the next night, and another after that. Ryan wasn't charming in the performative way Carter had been. No theatrics, no curated version of himself. He asked about my favorite book. He remembered how I took my coffee. He never once mentioned social media. One Friday, he brought homemade lasagna upstairs and said, "I'm a terrible cook, but I'm a decent learner. You up for being the teacher?" It wasn't a grand gesture. It was better. It was real. A month later, I woke before dawn to the sound of rain against the windows. Buster was curled up at my feet. The world outside was soft and gray, and for once, I didn't feel the urge to fix or fight anything. I poured coffee, opened my journal, and wrote one final entry under the heading, Aftermath. Some people rebuild their peace quietly, like architects who work at night. No blueprints, no applause, just patience. That's how you know it's real. I closed the notebook, exhaled, and watched the rain blur the city skyline. Carter's story had ended months ago. Sabrina's a few headlines after that. Mine hadn't ended at all. It had simply stopped being about survival. Now it was about design. Buster lifted his head, tail thumping once, as if to punctuate the thought. I smiled and whispered into the quiet apartment. "Turns out predictable isn't boring. It's peace you can live inside."